Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Ted Erhart. Just want to highlight what's a really kind of unique, fun, and also interesting article in the Wall Street Journal today. It's July 1st. So within the New York Mets organization, today is commonly known as Bobby Bonilla Day. So Bobby Bonilla, and forgive me if I'm getting the pronunciation wrong there, but he's a retired baseball player who struck what's kind of become a famous deal back in the year 2000. So he was at the end of his playing career, and the Mets wanted to part ways with him. However, they owed him $5.9 million. But instead of taking the $5.9 million, what he did was he struck a deal. He said, okay, you keep your $5.9 million. But starting 10 years in the future, so not until 2011, and again, remember, he's negotiating this deal in the year 2000. He's like, instead of my $5.9 million, what I want is a $1.2 million annual payment beginning in 2011 that's going to last me for the next 25 years. So this has actually worked out quite well for him in a retirement planning context. And we can take a look at what those numbers look like. So let me hop over to Excel. I'll just give you a couple figures. Here's basically a timeline for Bobby Bonilla's deal. So he gave up $5.9 million up front, nothing for the next 10 years, but beginning in 2011, he started getting his $1.2 million. And again, per the deal, he's going to get that for 25 years. So if we add all these numbers up, 25 years of this figure, it comes up to nearly $30 million. So Bobby Bonilla, in a sense, turned $5.9 million into nearly $30 million in this deal. And that sounds like a huge number, but it's spread out over time. So we can do an internal rate of return calculation to get a sense of how good of a deal this really has been. And when I do the math on it, it actually works out to a perfect 8% internal rate of return. And what this tells me is whoever put the exact details of this deal together, I'm sure they did this exact calculation that we're looking at here. And back in the year 2000, an 8% guarantee on a long-term fixed contract like this wasn't way out in left field, pun intended. I mean, just interest rates across the board were much higher, so this really doesn't surprise me. It probably sounds high today because we've been living in a low interest rate world for so long. But nonetheless, this has worked out well for Bobby Bonilla. It's kind of, people have made fun of the New York Mets because here they're paying some guy $1.2 million per year right now, and he hasn't even played baseball since the year 2000. But here's the more important lesson I also want to point out. What Bobby Bonilla did, in effect, was he created an annuity for himself. He, in effect, paid $5.9 million in exchange for this cash flow stream that he's collecting today. And I bring this up because I think in the retirement planning world, the word annuity has almost become pejorative in some cases. And there's different reasons for that. I could probably do a whole video on that in and of itself. But you got to be careful about painting, using too broad of a brush to paint an entire concept or strategy. In Bobby Bonilla's case, creating this annuity for himself has actually worked out exceptionally well. And here we are today. It's middle of 2020. And the stock market's down about 20%. It's in fact the worst start, I think, in something like 50 years from a stock market perspective. I can tell you there's a lot of people that would sleep better at night knowing they had a guaranteed source of cash flow coming in during retirement, in contrast to having this investment portfolio that's out there gyrating around. So I'm being a little bit too long-winded here, but I'm just making a point that annuities aren't necessarily all bad. I think there's this misconception in the public domain that all annuities are bad. And And they've been a relatively small part of my professional career in terms of advice, but I have recommended them when they make sense. And I think this is kind of a good illustration of how they can work out very well for folks, again, when the circumstances make sense. So anyway, this is just kind of an interesting article. It's kind of fun to talk about as well. I hope it was helpful. If it was, look, do me a favor, like the Facebook page, subscribe on YouTube, give me a thumbs up. It really helps get the message out. Hope we'll see you on the next one.